Greetings and welcome to this episode of Go XDGO, the official podcast of XDGO. XDGO is an experience design consultancy that focuses on helping organizations, teams, and individuals understand, embrace, and sustain the practice of experience design. I'm Matthew Doty, founder and principal consultant of XDGO. In this episode, I spent some time with Fred Beecher. Fred has worked in user experience since 1998. He's an established contributor in the field, having authored the first official Axure training program in 2007, and having written and spoken extensively on prototyping, design process, design education, and UX career development. In 2013, Fred designed, implemented, and led a UX apprenticeship program at the Nerdery. From 2015 to 2017, Fred led the design team at the Nerdery. Currently, Fred leads experience design operations for Best Buy. My discussion with Fred centers on understanding design operations and how this emerging field helps enable great design. For those of you listening to this podcast on Spotify or iTunes, make sure to check out this podcast on our YouTube channel so that you can see our smiling faces as we discuss, learn, and laugh together. A link to our YouTube channel is included in the description of this podcast. If you wouldn't mind just kind of giving the listeners of the podcast who are you? What do you do? Like, what is design operations? Like, what the heck?
All right. So first off, I'm old and have been doing this for a long time now. So it's kind of a long story.
That means I'm old too.
Yes. Like most folks who are in UX of our particular vintage, I kind of stumbled into it accidentally. And once there, I feel phenomenally blessed and lucky to be to have gotten into it when I did, and to find something that is so meaningful because it really helps make the world a better place. The reason that I do what I do is because technology is supposed to make the world better for people, but inevitably it fails to do so, and in many ways makes it worse. So I feel like the goal of human-centered design in general is to make it so that technology can actually realize that promise and actually make things better for people. And then, being a bit of a jack of all trades, like, for example, my education is in biomedical engineering and English literature. And I am neither a good enough writer to be a professional writer, nor am I good enough with technology to be an actual engineer. But I love all of those things. So through technical writing, I came to UX, where I realized, if you just understand the people you're making stuff for in the first place, it doesn't matter how you write the manual, because the manual won't be very necessary.
Right. Only in those strange edge cases where certain things can't help but to go wrong.
Yeah, or if you're just working with a profoundly complex piece of technology,
right.
But yeah, so I did. I was what I guess you would call a generalist UX designer for many, many years, doing strategy, research, design. One area of UX that I never really touched was visual design, because I dress like a wireframe. Me and color, we don't work out so well together.
By the way, anybody who's watching this podcast on YouTube will notice that Fred and I both got the memo on wardrobe today. So
I honestly don't have many other shirts. I have some that vary the shade of black. There might be a pattern here or there, but
right.
Yeah, we frequently ended up dressing the same at Best Buy. But yeah, so my background is as a generalist designer, and then I got really interested in prototyping. Prototyping is, I think, one of the most profoundly beneficial practices in the human-centered design practice. So that's an important thing. The other important thing would be helping to get people into experience design. That's something that I'm always really passionate about doing. Fortunately now, because when you and I got into this, no one really got into it on purpose. There wasn't really a path to get
Right.
into it for many, many
Right.
years. And
Yep.
now there's a lot of paths into it. So I end up doing a little bit less of that, but working with schools like Prime and Center and stuff like that. So yeah, and so that brings us up to design operations. My role before this, where I'm leading design operations at Best Buy, was leading the design team at the Nerdery, which is an interactive agency in Minneapolis. We had across 3 offices, a little over 40 designers when I was there. And one of the things that I noticed as moving from designer to design leader was that there was sort of 3 areas of practice that a design leader had. One was interfacing with the business, so the executives and sales and people
Yep.
focused on the movement of little green pieces of paper. Um, and then there's working with the actual people on the design team, helping
Yep.
them with their careers and getting them on useful projects and stuff like that. And then there's the stuff in the middle. Um, and the stuff in the middle is all about doing design better, having a greater impact, building a team that continually learns and continually builds on their skills, where we have the tools and the resources to do good design well and efficiently. And I almost never got to do that stuff. Most of what I was doing was interfacing with the business. And
Yeah.
after that, it was interfacing with the people. And, maybe I get to spend 5 to 10% of my time on how we actually design. So when I heard about this thing called design operation or design ops, I'm like, that sounds like DevOps. Why would I be interested in that? And then I poked around in it for a while, and in actually talking with someone from Target, uh, they sort of they attached apprenticeship, which is something that's really important to me. They sort of threw that into the design ops bucket, and I'm like, oh yeah, managing a team and making sure that it has a good talent plan in place, good talent pipeline. That's really critical for making a team work well. Because if you don't have the people, you can't do the work. So I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah,
Right.
and that started to really get me to think differently about it. And then so lots of things happened, and I found myself running design ops at Best Buy. And honestly, I couldn't be happier, because what I've discovered that design ops is it's essentially all that stuff in the middle that I didn't get to do before as a design leader, and now that's my job.
It's funny. I think it takes well, and actually, let me just pause and just from my perspective, when I was working at Best Buy before you came, and then you came on, and I kind of saw you start to spread your wings and do your thing. I was so grateful that you were there. So I know that's not the focus of our podcast today, but I wanted to say, like, wow, thank you,
Well,
and
great.
yeah.
Yeah, research ops is a whole different thing. But as the sole person who is dedicated to design operations at Best Buy,
Right.
I'm not kidding. I probably spend at least half my time on research operations, and I think that's correct, because
Mhm.
without humans, you can't do human-centered design.
Right. Right. What I'd like to do is have like a really clear juxtaposition of what is design operations and what are the common misconceptions. So, from a
Sure.
storytelling standpoint, whatever makes most sense or whatever would be most entertaining from your perspective, with the what it actually is, we can start with what it actually is, or we can start with the misconceptions and then go into the what it actually is. So, I'm going to let you pick.
All right, let's do number 2, I think, because I think uh, a lot of people sort of wonder where design ops came from, and because it has ops in it, it makes people think of DevOps,
Yep.
which it really has very little in common with. And that's probably the first misconception, is that design ops is like DevOps. It's almost in no way like DevOps, but in terms of what it's trying to accomplish, it is very similar. So DevOps is aimed at making it easier for developers to release quality, high-functioning code. And for development and engineering, there are a lot of things that you can automate. With experience design, that's a lot more difficult. There are some things that we can streamline, but automation is something that's pretty much entirely outside the realm of design operations. And then there is this is sort of less a misconception and more a disambiguation. There's sort of three things that design ops gets lumped in with. There would be research operations, which I would consider to be a component of design operations, because if you don't have research, why are you bothering to design anything? And then there's the sort of design program management side of design operations, which is focused on getting design done and streamlining that process, and getting design plugged into the rest of the business, and in such a way that it adds value to the business.
Right.
And then there's the sort of more pure design ops side, which is how design gets done, and improving how design gets done, and therefore improving or increasing the amount of impact that the team can have, because they can get good design done quickly because there's a design system which has solved all of these small design problems that need to be, so you don't need to resolve how to do a multiple select that's in the design system. You use that. That way you can use your designer brain for more complex problems that human beings might actually be having.
Right. So kind of sort of like aim the creativity. We have kind of this scarce resource of creativity. Let's free it up to focus on solving really, really tough challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do that. One of the major ways that we do that is through this thing called design ops. Cool.
For sure. Yeah. So those are the sort of three things that sort of fall in the design ops universe. Like in the way that we work together, the strategy and operations team, they would probably be more design program management, whereas I am more straight up design ops, which is great because project management is not my forte. Let's just say that.
It's fun. No, I totally get that. Although I do find that surprising because your brain just, I mean, I've observed you, over the years, and I can see your brain working in a way that's very complementary to that. So I am a little surprised.
Oh, I can, I can do task flow diagrams and process diagrams all day long.
Right.
But when it comes to actually doing spinning all of the plates that are required in order to simply just manage a project, it's like too many different things for me to pay attention to, and too many of those things are people, which never work the way that you would like them to work.
True words.
Yeah. So I want to share with you a visual metaphor.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yay, visual metaphor.
I'm pretty sure you've seen this. So
okay.
Let me just load it up here. So,
sorry, I'm in.
Okay, hopefully you remember this.
I was a huge fan of Next Generation.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually found this to be less helpful than I thought, because next generation is now what, 30 years old or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
it's the past generation.
yeah, exactly.
But this
Anyway,
totally resonates with me because like I was my whole family was like into the next generation. We watch it every week
yep,
religiously.
yeah. All right, so let me explain this a little bit here. So, design operations often gets a little bit confused with design leadership because a lot of the stuff
Mm.
that I'm doing, people are used to directors and stuff doing.
Yeah.
So, I like to use this visual metaphor. Uh, Design leadership is more like Captain Picard. Because Captain Picard is beholden only to Starfleet. Starfleet has the mission to explore new worlds and new civilizations, and that's the sort of broad strategy that Starfleet is trying to accomplish. And Picard has been empowered to figure out how to, or the sort of tactics of achieving that particular mission. And he has at his disposal a starship. And in this metaphor, the starship is actually the entire design team. It's not the people in the starship, it's actually the starship. Um, so Picard has at his disposal this starship with which he can do whatever he needs to do in order to achieve that particular goal. Now, the starship needs to be capable of executing his direction, and that falls to Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge. And so I try to liken design operations to what LaForge does for the enterprise, which is he continually reconfigures the deflector array for a variety of reasons, because that's the sort of hand wavy thing that you do in Star Trek in order to deal with completely unforeseen situations. He
As well
makes
as
sure.
well as push the engines to their limit.
Yes, yes. There's lots of issues with dilithium. Um, but yeah, so it's his responsibility to make sure that the starship is is capable and flexible enough to be able to accommodate the strange and highly contextual requests of Captain Picard. So he is in charge of making sure that they have dilithium, making sure that everything is running at peak efficiency, making sure that the 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 engineering sector can support all of the different functions of engineering a starship and things like that. So uh, Captain Picard could still lead the Enterprise without Geordi LaForge, but it would be much, much more difficult. The Enterprise would be able to do less because it would be stopped in its tracks by many things. Whereas with Geordi LaForge, there Picard can focus on dealing with the situations he needs to deal with, understanding and trusting that Geordi can make sure that the ship is able to perform whatever action he needs it to perform.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I mean, if I were to carry the analogy further, it's actually a really good analogy for how those two functions ought to work
Hmm.
together. So, like, if anyone's a fan of the show, you know the type of relationship that Captain Picard and Geordi LaForge have, and you know that there are times when they are just completely in sync, and
Hmm.
you know that there are times when they don't agree and they actually kind of butt heads a little bit, but
Hmm.
never at any time do the two kind of I don't want to say fundamentally conflict, but they function kind of in good faith.
Yeah,
And
they trust each other
yeah,
even when
yeah,
they don't agree.
right, exactly. And at the same time, and I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast about what I'm about to say, but what I think what enables their relationship to function well is that you have really clear accountabilities. Geordi knows what decisions Picard owns, and
Hmm.
Picard knows what decisions Geordi owns. and they know that when push comes to shove and if they disagree and some decision needs to be made, they know who really kind of owns what.
Mm-hmm.
That's and I don't I hate the word decision ownership, but I haven't found a better one that really communicates um, what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like whose expertise is, or whose subject matter expertise
Right.
applies in a given situation.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's that's it's
No,
there's so much there's so much good material in Star Trek. I mean,
yeah.
there's so much good material in science fiction in general, but
Yes,
I'm
for sure.
biased.
All right, so we've spoken in highfalutin
Yeah.
metaphorical terms. Should we spend a little bit of time talking about what I actually do every day?
Well, I would love to know before we do, I would love to know like what would you say is the most painful misconception that people have? Like when you what's the thing that when you bump up against it, you're like, ah, here we go again. Is it the whole, hey, it's like DevOps thing, or is it something else?
You know what? I would say it's less a misconception and more
Hmm.
what you were just talking about, like who
Yeah.
owns decisions.
Oh yeah.
Because of the ease of conflating design ops with design leadership,
Mm.
oftentimes it's difficult for people to understand uh, whether you have authority to be asking them to do what you're asking them to do.
Hmm.
Because if you have a director title and that person reports to you, you have to do what they say. But when, like I'm adjacent to a lot of the senior design leaders at Best Buy, but no one's actually reporting to me.
Right.
So actually, and when we were organized much more in a much more broad fashion previously,
Hmm.
it was really difficult. But since we came together all into a single team, that issue has gotten a lot better because even if people don't report to me, I at least report to their boss or their boss's boss or something. So a little bit of that authority wears off on me. And in general,
Nice.
people understand that I work for the leaders, and I'm not just asking people to do random stuff. But it is always a challenge,
Yeah.
especially being a design ops team of one. Um, Everything I do has to be collaborative. And everyone else has lots of other things that they're doing too. So uh,
Right.
that can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I'm kind of getting this picture in my head of there's kind of this collection of advantages and disadvantages to being to doing what you do, and in particular being in the position structurally and organizationally that you are in Best Buy. Some of the advantages might be, and tell me if I'm wrong or right or whatever, but it seems like one of the advantages would be is you kind of get to fly outside of some of the drama created by hierarchies and organizational structure, but because you're outside of the hierarchies and organizational structure, it's hard to it's harder to influence behavior
Yeah,
because
that's exactly it. That's
yeah.
exactly it. Because I can fly between any teams meetings and present at any teams meetings or whatever, and no one questions why I'm there.
Mhm.
But like if I was leading the customer experience side of things, and then all of a sudden I started interfering with stuff that the employee experience team was doing, people would get weird about that. But people are less weird about my own meddling because I don't really have, like, everywhere is my space.
Right. Right. And what's interesting is the more people who understand that yes, everywhere is your space, but the more people understand that like your agenda is to help them be good.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
that
that can
is
be fraught too,
yeah,
because if
true.
you're saying that I'm here to uh, to make it easier to do your job or to help you do a better job, people are like, well, does that mean I'm not doing a good job? Does that
Right.
mean that you think I'm bad
Right.
at my job? And there can be lots of defensiveness, which
Yeah.
is a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, we are so fascinating as a
Yeah.
species.
Yeah. But
We just,
I would say that one thing that if you in the audience are an aspiring design ops participant or professional yourself, I would encourage you to embrace the idea of hierarchy.
mm,
Um, Best Buy is by far the largest place that I've worked. It is the only corporate job that I have worked. And when I first came there, the hierarchy was it was really difficult for me to navigate until I figured out, oh wait, I can actually use this as a tool. Because if I am trying to make something happen and someone is putting up some resistance, if I talk with that person's leader or some leader in that person's organization, then that person can use their authority to make things move forward. And once I figured that out, it's like, oh, okay, hierarchy
yes.
isn't inherently evil and a dumb way to do things. It's just
Yes.
a tool that you have to learn how to use.
Yes.
Like,
Oh my gosh. I am so like right now, I'm freaking out on my end. I'm like, I mean, surprise, we agree on something, you know? But yeah, like that actually reminds me. So you and I both go, we speak at various things, and one of the questions that I'm sure you get often is, how do I help this, this organization that I'm working with? How do I work with them? Uh, how do I kind of influence things? And one of the things that I find myself saying frequently is much of what you just said is you need to, and you're also into martial arts, so this will actually um, there's a lot in martial arts about using your opponent's momentum
mhm,
to your advantage.
mhm,
And that the same is true of really influencing anybody or any team or any organization. Once you understand kind of where how the thing operates and where kind of what are the levers to push, you can actually jump into that momentum. You can lean into that momentum instead of fighting against it. And I
mhm,
think for some reason, especially as people who practice human-centered design, because so much of what we do is trying to get people to think differently about how they solve problems. It's easy to want to. I think our first instinct is to go against the grain or to go against the momentum, or to go against the current, whereas there's so much more productive outcomes to be found in understanding, respecting, and using the current, using the momentum to our
mhm.
to our advantage.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. And honestly, this is where I feel like being an agency designer for so long has really been helpful because it didn't take me long to make that switch because I'm used to trying to understand what it is people want. What is a client trying to accomplish? What do they find valuable? What are they trying to do? And
Mhm.
once you understand that, then you can start speaking to them about your thing in their terms and or in
Yes.
terms of how
Yes.
the thing that you want to do is going to impact the thing that they want to do.
Mhm.
And then that usually gets things moving
Mhm.
a little bit
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah. It's like this whole idea of meeting them where they are,
Yep.
understanding their vocabulary and their values, and aligning with that and demonstrating how what we do helps them get there better, faster, cheaper.
Yeah. And, honestly, I think that this is one of the places where a lot of people in UX fall down
Mhm.
because we feel like, okay, there's a right way to do things. You have to get user input. But the reality is that every situation has different constraints, and it doesn't do you any good to be frustrated that okay, this particular stakeholder doesn't understand why we need to do research. Just take that as a design constraint. How can you provide value within the constraints that you have? And a designer not, or a stakeholder not believing in research is a constraint.
Yes.
So it's our job to figure out, okay, how can we build in human input into this design process without doing research? I mean, you can
Right.
do research and not call it research. I've done
Right.
that. That's fun.
Subtle tactics of the experience design community.
Yeah, exactly. It's you if you call research ideation on a proposal, you can get away with whatever you want because
Yeah,
ideation
absolutely.
sounds designery, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. It sure does. It sure does. Well, cool. Let's actually. I do want to kind of go back to what you were saying earlier. I'd love to know, like, we have kind of veered a little bit, but I have really appreciated the kind of the tangent. Um, so we've talked in kind of broad swaths about what design operations is,
Mhm.
and we spent a fair amount of theoretical. I'd love to know, like you were saying earlier, like what do you actually do? Like what?
It's fun to talk about what I actually do because it's so broad. It's everywhere from giving people envision seats all the
Mm,
way up to uh, creating a skills framework for the entire experience design team and
mhm.
everything in.
Right.
So yes, dealing with tools is a huge part of what I do. I currently maintain about 90% of the vendor relations that we have.
Oh,
Right.
bless your heart. I'm just going to pause you there. Just going to pause you there. Thank you. Thank you. And we don't work together anymore, but I remember just the pain that was, and then when you came, the joy.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
You,
I love doing that stuff because when a designer doesn't have a tool that they need, that's one of the most demotivating things.
Mhm.
And one of the things that gets in the way of that is leaders simply not having the bandwidth to make that kind of stuff happen.
Yep.
Um, you were talking before about uh, the getting traction related to a
Mhm.
lot of the research ops stuff. Well, a lot of that stuff is now in place. So we
Oh,
now have a new unmoderated research tool, which allows us to have as many seats as we want. So what we've done with that is we've made it so that the designers are now running their basic usability tests on prototypes
oh, frick
and
yes. That
and
is
anything
so
like
great.
that. So much like a design system helps a designer not have to solve the same little problems over and over again, this democratizing research like this helps make it so that the researchers who are specialized in research are spending time doing more complicated things, answering more nuanced questions than just running a usability test.
Yeah.
Um,
Wait. I just want to call out and just be very, very clear. Do you mean to tell me that something like usability testing doesn't have to take a month and cost tens of thousands of dollars?
it can take a day.
You heard it first here, folks.
Yeah, I mean, usability testing it can come in a lot of different forms.
Right, right.
I mean, if you want to know a lot of stuff or something really complicated, it's not
Sure.
going to take a day.
Right,
If,
right.
if you want to know how well a particular interaction works, you can get that done in a day with modern tools.
Yeah, and what I love about that is there's still, I mean, even in 2020, there's still this sense that taking a human-centered approach is just oodles of dollars and oodles of hours
Mhm.
and especially like so when I think about two kind of extremes, you have so I'm in Gainesville and this is like the seedbed of a lot of different medical startups.
Hmm.
It's really interesting. I'm finding that here, and I'm actually working on on a couple of contracts, potential contracts with some startups, and um, and so you have that on one end where that's very much steeped in the test and learn methodology. Then you have a huge company like Best Buy, who is who sees the value of a more iterative, nimble test and learn methodology. Something like what you're describing is perfect because each kind of iteration or each sprint, you're not dealing with like wagon loads of functionality.
Mhm.
You're dealing with like a digestible piece of something that can actually be designed, tested, built, in a very short time frame, and enabling designers, and I would even argue if the situation warrants, developers, anybody who has the understanding and the desire to run these types of research methods. Your efforts in design ops have now enabled that and made that a reality. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of money, and
Exactly.
and you're human centered, which is
Exactly.
which is the goal.
Yeah, that's the, when I talk about design within constraints,
Hmm.
or provide value within constraints. Oftentimes, your constraint is that the sprint ends or ends this Friday, so you
Right.
need to answer your question now. That is a
Mhm.
constraint. You might not be able to research it and explore all the nuances of it, but
Mhm.
you can do something. You
Yes.
can always
Ah,
do
yes.
something.
Yep. I love that. I love that.
So other things that I'm involved into, again, with research is managing our research insights repository, which is
Mhm.
now fully operational.
Oh, that is so good to hear. You were just starting that up as I was leaving.
Yep,
That's
that's
awesome.
actually my next meeting is talking with
Oh,
someone about that. And so we now have designers and researchers uh, following a governance process, entering their
mhm.
insights into this repository, and we're building it up so that it will be useful for designers who have a question about um, our customers or consumers. They can go in and search through this thing to see what we already know, and we may not already know something, which means then, okay, well, we'll run a study on it, and then we'll know that thing.
Right.
um, so having that in place is going to be really, really huge, because we're not going to forget all the things that we've done. We're not
Yeah.
going to have to do studies multiple times because we forgot that we already did them.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
that's going to be huge.
That's so awesome. I mean,
Let's
yeah,
see.
bringing that kind of nimble capability together, nimble self-service with like a consistent way to log insights. I
Mhm.
mean, I can just imagine within a few months and especially in a few years, that repository is going to be this rich resource to mine.
Yep.
Because, like, yeah, in study X, we were looking for, how do what were customers' perceptions of X, Y, and Z, but now we're in project Y that has a lot to do with study X. What did we learn
Yeah.
in study X?
One of the interesting things that we learned when we were doing research to inform the governance process. So, yes, the governance process was designed according to the principles of human centered design. Technically, we're prototyping it right now.
Yes.
But we learned that when business folks have questions about our customers or consumers or people, they're really hyper specific.
Mhm.
And there's no way that we can create a research repository that is going to be able to answer those types of questions.
Yeah.
So the way that we set it up is such that the insights that are there and are sort of the main piece of information are written in a particular way. And they're
Yeah.
written to function as signals to say that, okay, if you're looking for this type of thing, okay, I'm seeing these four insights come up from these three different studies. I'm going to
Mhm.
look into this, and I'm going to open up the actual study and look at it for the detail. And then I can actually learn something. So an insight doesn't have to be uh, our 100% comprehensive knowledge about a
Mhm.
thing. It just needs to reflect that we know a thing about this,
Mhm.
and we can explain more in this bigger document. I hope to get to the point where we no longer need documents, but that's an entirely different level. And so right now we're just
Yeah.
getting to this level. Um, so there's that. I lead one of our multiple design systems, and I am participating in an effort to create an enterprise-wide design system, and then also leading a cross.
Is that last one, the enterprise wide? Is that the one that Randy's leading?
Yes,
Okay, I thought so.
yes. Um, and then the other main thing that I'm working on right now is redesigning the experience design candidate experience. So I'm working with all of the different um, design teams and design leaders, as well
Mhm.
as leaders and folks in talent acquisition and scheduling and all that sort of stuff, and getting all those people together in one room, so to speak. So yeah,
That's so cool.
and then the other part of my job that we have to talk about is what Dave Cover calls randomizing, which is I will get emails, Slacks, Teams messages, whatever, sort of just asking random questions and needing random things done and stuff like that. I would say randomizing comprises about 10%, at least 10% of every day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I can imagine. I can imagine at the beginning it was probably a lot more.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's impressive that it's only 10%.
Well, at the beginning, I had to I'm like, I don't know, but I'll find that out.
Right. That's so cool.
Speaking of, after this, I actually have to receive an invoice, so I need to remember to do that.
Radical. Well, we have roughly 60 seconds left.
All right.
What if you kind of had a platform to, like, what final thing would you say, whether it's related to what we've been talking about, what's something that if you had somebody who was either wondering about design ops or curious about it, what's one thing that you would tell them or one thing that you would say?
Well, I would say, assuming that this person is not already a design leader,
Sure.
I would ask them to take their design leader or a design leader that they know out to lunch and listen to them complain. Serious.
Nice.
Because if you hear what a design leader complains about, that's often going to be something that design ops helps with. And if you work with that design leader to say, maybe you just pick one thing. Maybe it's not, creating a skills framework, but maybe it's something smaller that you can help take off their plate and get it done and have it start impacting the team. That way you can start to prove the value of design operations in some way.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. Well, thank you again for taking time. I know you have another meeting that you've got to run to, but I really appreciate you taking time. It's been fun to reconnect. I've been thinking, we should just jump on a call and chat in a non-podcast.
That would be awesome.
At some point. I have so many questions for you now. All right, cool, man. Well, thank you, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just let me know that you saw this, and we can talk about design ops to your heart's content. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Go XDGO. A special thanks to my guest speaker, Fred Beecher, for joining me today. Our next podcast will kick off a new series focused on design leadership. In this series, I interview both leaders of design as well as leaders who value good design. My goal is to explore what it means to be responsible for designing great experiences and what it takes to organize and enable the practice of experience design from a leadership perspective. My first guest will be Winner Exius, a seasoned creative brand director and brand creative strategist. Until then, please like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. To learn more about XDGO and how we can help you, your team, and your organization build your experience design capabilities, please visit us at www.xdgo.io.